Everybody, it's your boy Sad Nixon coming at you with another Secret Hitler tournament statistics video, and this one is about the fantasy draft, which is an event that I put on where after the captains did their captain's draft, going back and forth, snake style, the people, the audience, the spectators, were able to pick their own favorites from each of the 14 rounds plus the captain round and make their own team, basically, to compete against each other. And having gotten a lot of data, I think that it's really interesting to look at what the people, as a consensus, thought were the best picks from each round. You can look at, who got picked the most from each round and figure that out. And those people I've highlighted here in green. That would be Pingu, Medusa, Kexi, Tyrox, Ribstar, Chopin, Just Next Lib, Sidewalk Kill, Nizea, Secret Ginger, Paladin, 007 Fashtusa, King Umami, Preaky, and ZZ Real Grizz. These are the people that the spectators, the other players who weren't the captains, thought were the best picks from each round. And looking at them here, you can see that they don't really align with what the draft might imply were the best picks, because if you assume that every single captain is drafting perfectly optimally, trying to draft the best player available to them at that point, then the people in these spots should be assumed to be the best people, right? If Maxi's getting drafted first, that means that Manu should be thinking that Maxi is the best person in the whole draft. If Ray is getting drafted at the top of the second round, that means that Tom is saying that Ray is the best person available at that point, and so on. And you can see that the people who are consensus picks and the people who the captains picked as the best person from each round only overlap one time with Nizea. The rest of them, they do not overlap. So, what can we get from this? Well, number one, we can get that the spectators thought that Dice did a really good job drafting. He drafted 4 people who were then picked as the consensus pick from that round by the fillers out of the fantasy draft. The people thought that Manu did a really bad job because he didn't pick any of the consensus picks, and he passed up on, a whole bunch. He basically let Dice pick Medusa, Ginger, 007 Fashtusa, and Preaky. But what else can we do? Well, we can develop a metric by which we can measure each fantasy draft. And that metric is a metric of basically implied mistakes. Because if you've drafted on your fantasy draft Medusa, you're implicitly saying that one captain, Manu, has made a mistake in not drafting them when they could have. It was available to them. In the same way, you're saying that, in the case of Tyrox, if you're putting Tyrox on your draft, you're saying that Manu, Dice, Iconic, and Ashley all passed up on the best player of that round. All 4 of them made a mistake. So if you drafted those 2 people, you can add those up and you can say, okay, they made 1 mistake with Medusa and 4 mistakes with Tyrox, so that's 5 mistakes total. And you can keep on adding that up for every round and get a total score of mistakes that you think the captains made in terms of picking the best player from that round. And basically calculating that metric is what I've done. So I've created a big spreadsheet that shows each person's fantasy draft, and it has a score that basically says, this is how many mistakes I feel like the captains made in terms of drafting the best person from each round, according to what I think the best player from each round was. So if we look at the top, we see Newt. This is Newt's Discord, and Newt said that the captains made only 18 mistakes. So negative 18 means 18 mistakes. So that's not very many mistakes. That sounds like a lot, but in the scheme of things, it's not that many. The average number of mistakes that these drafts implied was about 37, I think. The consensus draft implied 33 mistakes, so 18 is pretty low. And we can see why that's pretty low. They picked Maxi for their first rounder, so they said that Manu got it right. They also picked Nizea, Jamers, and COC Dumby, which if we go back, we remember those are people kind of in the top of their round, and so therefore implied to be the best player from that round. Yeah. So Newt's at the very top. Who else is here? Geo is up here, agreeing with the captains pretty well. Neck Knobs, Dur, Star Crush, Evan, Ant, I'm an Ant, Shandor, Desi. These are all people who said that the captains made, 25 or under mistakes. These people think the captains did an honestly good job. But who thinks the captains did the worst? Let's find out. Okay, turns out to be Preaky, actually. So Preaky made quite an interesting draft, the result of which was that they thought that the captains actually made 107 mistakes. So that's pretty intense. They really, didn't like what the captains did, and even though they did say that Manu got it right with Maxi, they pretty much didn't agree on anything else. With the captains. And we can see that they even actually drafted ZZ Real Grizz in the 13th round. The captains waited till the 14th round to draft them. So that is a really big difference. That, added a lot to their score. The fact that they thought that ZZ got drafted a whole round too late. But in any case, yeah, it's a big gulf between that and even the second place, which is only 75 mistakes. Woo. Some other people up here are Nizia. Now, Nizia drafted a team called Men Are Trash, and I think she drafted all women except one. So that is, maybe that's why, because, the captains didn't really draft with that in mind, I don't think. So, this is bound to disagree with the captains quite a bit. But yeah, 75 mistakes, pretty up there. Scorcha also very critical of the captain's decisions. Bruno, very critical. Tenna, very critical. Moira, very critical. Wow, 2 editors on the list of people who thinks the captains really screwed up. That is an interesting result. And 2 mods also, Scorcha and Zillans. All right. Let's look at something else now. So I mentioned before this kind of list of consensus picks, Pingu, Medusa, Kexi, etc. So I wanted to know which people's drafts coincided with those picks the most. Like, did anyone actually pick all 15 of these picks? Who picked the most of these picks? Who picked the least of these picks? So I figured that out as well. And it turns out that the person who picked the least of these picks, basically the person with the hottest take, is Oozing over here, who actually only coincided with the consensus pick one time, and that was on Medusa. Every other pick they disagreed, so yeah, this is quite a hot take. BBQ and Preaky also with extremely hot takes, super hot takes. Ashley also with the hot take. Now Ashley, I think, just drafted her own actual team, which is an interesting choice. Shandor with the hot take, also with the very hot name. Ava with the hot take. Jay with the hot take. Revolution, OGN, Jen, Pog, and Jen with the hot take. Only agreeing on 1 or 2 or 3 consensus picks here. What about the other way? Who had the coldest takes? So we can see here some cold takes. Z Factor. Oh, wow. So Z Factor actually had the coldest take. They agreed with the consensus pick 10 times out of 15. They agreed on Medusa, Kexi, Tyrox, Rivstar, Chopin, Just Next Slip. Not on DJ or Z Factor, but they agreed on Ginger, 007 Vashtusa, Umami. Yeah, that's a lot of agreement there, I must say. So Z Factor is really tuned in to what the people in general, think about these guys and who's the best from each round. Pingu also picked a really kind of like on consensus draft. He picked also 10 out of 15, the same as the consensus. So, maybe the people are just following Pingu. I don't know. Andrew with the cold take, Star with the cold take, Wrath with the cold take. Maybe this will pay off for these guys. Maybe these guys, they're the most in tune with what people think, and maybe the people are thinking good things. Maybe the best opinions are the majority ones in this case, and it'll work out for these teams, or maybe not. We'll see. But it'll be very interesting to see how this turns out. I'm going to revisit this after the tourney is over and we see whose fantasy drafts actually won. Yeah. So that's my video. More videos coming about stats in the tourney. Maybe in the middle of the tourney, maybe after the tourney. We'll see. But I'll see you later.